welcome to the channel, which I'm now calling At Midlife Crisis Motorcyclist, in a pretty self-explanatory description of a slight change in direction based on the fact that, yes, I done got me a bike licence, and I thought I'd share some of my experiences and the bikes I'll be riding as I go. And today, adventure bikes. And what's all the fuss about? The bike to hopefully answer the question is the Honda XL750 Transalp you see behind me. But before we get to that, a quick recap if you haven't already seen the explainer that I put up before. Cars have basically been my thing for years now, but I've always fancied trying bikes as well, and well, as befits my age, now seems as good a time to do it as any. Now, if you want an expert techie review of this motorcycle, and others I'll be featuring along the way, there are more clued up folk than me who can talk about steering geometry, crank firing orders, and the finer nuances of suspension setup and that kind of stuff. And don't expect any skids, wheelies or anything else spectacular in riding terms. I am basically your average middle-aged wobbly bloke trying to get to grips with motorcycles without killing myself. And hopefully my newbie enthusiasm offers a bit of a fresh take. So if, like me, you're new to it, hopefully you'll join me for the ride. Anyway, disclaimers aside, what is the fuss about adventure bikes? Okay, I've not been riding long and I've only tried a handful of bikes so far, but I can't help but notice just how popular this style of bike is while being left somewhat cold. I mean, I get that they're practical and comfortable and you can do everything from commuting to touring and even a bit of light off-road, but without having ridden one or spent quality time on them, I'm not really sure I feel that same fizz of excitement, that same I've just got to go for a ride for the hell of it sense that I got with the Triumph Scrambler 900 that I had in recently. Honda Transalp, can you win me over to adventure bikes? Before I go for a ride to try and answer that, let's just have a quick once-over of what we have here. Based on the Honda Hornet, a bike which I have some previous with, having learned on one and spent a few months over the summer with one, this latest Transalp uses the same 755cc parallel twin and nails an equally competitive price point, just shy of 10 grand, which is, well, it's a bit cheaper than the Yamaha 10R many seem to consider a benchmark in this kind of middleweight adventure bike sector. With 92 horsepower, it's also quite a bit more powerful and it comes with all the latest gizmos like 5 rider modes, TFT screen and more. A KTM 790 Adventure meanwhile matches it for power and is perhaps a little more off-road credible and maybe a little bit more boutique, but it's nearly a grand more from the off. The one you see here has the £1,100 rally pack, which includes these engine protection bars and a skid plate, as well as a quick shifter. And there are various other self-explanatory packs like Tour, Urban, Comfort and the rest. Or you can just add the options individually if you prefer. For this time of year, I really wish they'd added heated grips to this one. Most temptingly, you can also get it in Honda's signature white, blue and red over gold wire wheels colour combo for that kind of full Junior Africa twin vibe, which is a bit more exciting than this black on black. Overall, it's a decent looking bike, if a little bit kind of tall and skinny from the front, though the rally pack helps beef up the stance a bit and it strikes a decent balance between approachable compactness and the kind of presence that adventure bikes seem to love. While it's built to a price, the overall finish is typically Honda in quality, and there's some nice details like these sort of gold aluminium sensors, the front brake discs, the TFT screen, the rider modes and all the tech. Enough to win me over though. Well, let's go for a ride. Okay, so let's go for a ride on the Transalp and see if it can win me over to this whole adventure biking thing. Now, I've ridden a few formats of bike so far. My only real go on any sort of adventure bike was a 125 learner friendly Wahoo, so it had the vibe but not really the performance. So this is kind of all new for me, but it is kind of familiar territory in a sense, because the Transalp is of course built on the Hornet, the new Hornet, which I know pretty well because that's the bike that I learnt on doing my Mod 1 and Mod 2, and also a bike that I rode for about 4 months once I got my test. So the engine and a lot of the systems and things like that I'm quite familiar with, but we'll get onto those in a bit. Let's just see where the Transalp kind of sits. Sort of, it's like the Hornet, it's pretty good value for money. So it's just under 10 grand, it's about 9,600 starting price, which combined with that 92 horsepower engine and all the kind of up-to-date rider modes and configurability and all that kind of stuff, looks pretty strong value. That's about 500 quid less than a entry-level price for a Yamaha 10R, or however you're supposed to pronounce it, which has, it's quite down on power quite a bit. It's only 73 horsepower compared with the 92 of this. It's nearly a grand less than a KTM 790 Adventure, which has comparable power, maybe looks a bit fancier, but you know, that's a grand is a decent amount of money, and the Honda's definitely more up to date than that in its equipment and all the rest of it. So strong value, really good value for money from the off. But you know, it's a motorbike, isn't it? Value for money and good sense and all that kind of thing. You want a motorbike that kind of gets under your skin and excites you. So that's kind of where my question mark over the adventure bike thing hangs, because as good as they are for commuting and touring and all those kinds of things, are they as sexy as kind of roadsters and nakeds and sports bikes and all the rest of it? I don't know, but up here in the middle of January on the top of the moors, it feels like a good place to try it out. And what are the impressions? Well, the engine is that parallel twin, as I say, from the Hornet, a new parallel twin. It's got a 270-degree crank and plenty of power, which is nice and exploitable. It's not the most characterful engine, I'm going to say, but it's got lots of torque. It'll kind of pick up in pretty much any gear, so it's nice and flexible. And then you've got that kind of top end as well. And although I can definitely feel the extra weight over the Hornet, so I think Honda lists this as about 203 kilos. I don't know whether Honda uses dry weights or with fluids. Somebody can let me know on that in the comments, I'm sure. But it's not actually that much heavier than the Hornet, but it's just a bigger, more substantial bike. And I find that I'm having to kind of wring it out a bit more, you know, for overtakes and things like that, than I perhaps would have done on the Hornet. I've not tried any of the other bikes, the 10R and things like that, so I don't know how they compare, but I'd imagine this feels stronger in that sense. The KTM is, they're all kind of a similar weight. The KTM's maybe a fraction lighter, but just to confuse things, they only list a dry weight. So, but I guess performance is going to be comparable. In terms of size and things like that, Transalp is a bit longer than some of its rivals, so a bit more stable, a bit more confidence inspiring, and certainly like the Hornet, which kind of was my first big bike. Transalp feels very friendly. Now obviously in that adventure bike style, you've got a big front wheel, 21 inch on this, 21 front, 18 at the back, so same as its Africa twin big brother, same as most of its rivals. And while I've not got enough miles in to really be able to talk about the finer details of handling, you could definitely tell the front end needs a bit more manhandling. The Hornet felt super pointy on the front end, very agile, This is a bit more relaxed, you're more upright, you have to kind of heave it into the turns a bit more. That's fine, I guess that's kind of the adventure bike vibe. I do appreciate on these colder days and on the motorway run having a bit more protection, the windscreen and stuff like that. I wish it had heated grips today though, I really wish it did, but no such luck. Unfortunately that is an option that I would be ticking if I was buying one for sure. And in terms of the rest of the kit, well, the rider modes are really good. So you've got 5 different modes: standard, rain, gravel, user, sport. I'm just running in standard at the moment. You can configure everything in that: traction control, multi-level traction control, engine braking, the throttle response, the ABS, things like that. So there's loads of gadgets and gizmos. It's very configurable. So from an electronics point of view, it's pretty cutting edge in that sense, like the Hornet. But chassis and brakes and things like that, well, again, I'll caveat it with being still quite new to all this, but the suspension it's kind of adequate, it's fine. The forks have got 200mm travel, there's slightly less out the back. Again, that's got class average compared with the KTM and the Tenaire. Well, it lacks compared with them is a load of adjustment in the forks and the shock. I don't think you've even got rebound on the back of this one, just preload. So that means, you know, particularly for an adventure bike, that seems a bit of an oversight, because if you're going to be loading it with luggage or carrying a pillion on the back. And while it's secure enough, it does feel, I'm going to say, if there were some rebound adjustment, I'd probably put a couple of more clicks on it, because it just feels a little bit bouncy sometimes. Not particularly sophisticated, so you can see where that extra grand on the KTM would be going in terms of its fully adjustable forks and shock. So just got some twisty bits here, so I'm being a little bit cautious because it is bloody cold today, so I don't want to hit any ice patches. You can see, you just, you know, at this kind of relaxed kind of adventure bike pace, yeah, it's a pretty chilled experience. But am I ready for a chilled experience yet? You know, I'm kind of, to me, motorbikes are meant to be kind of exciting and thrilling. I guess it depends what you're going to be using it for, isn't it? Now, this road is actually part of my commute, so yeah, in the depths of winter, then maybe a Transalp, definitely with the heated grips, would be something I would appreciate a bit more. But overall, it feels kind of what I expected out of an adventure bike. It feels kind of sensible, comfortable, adaptable, all those kind of things, but it's not quite getting my pulse raising, I'll say that. But then you have different bikes for different jobs, don't you? And that's probably not this bike's job. There we go. A quick overview of the Honda Transalp. Let's go to the wrap-up. So there it is, the Honda Transalp, the perfect, my first adventure bike, as it turns out. Really easy and confidence inspiring to ride, and I've appreciated the weather protection over the nakeds I've been riding thus far, especially on the commute and on motorways. In terms of price, spec, kit and performance, it's a really impressive package as well, especially for the money. And I totally get the practical arguments, and I've really enjoyed getting out and about on it, including a trip around the Lake District with YouTube's own Reg Local, with a North Face duffel bag bungeed onto the back for that full adventure biker look. But while I've really enjoyed it, I'm not quite sure I'm in my adventure bike phase yet. It feels just a bit sensible for where my head is at with my riding right now. Great bike, but I think my tastes are a little bit more to the fun than the practical currently. or maybe I just need to grow up. Anyway, there we go. I hope you've enjoyed this first of my bike reviews. Plenty more planned where this came from. So make sure you subscribe, follow me here on @midlifeCrisisMotorcyclist, and let's chat in the comments. Ride safe and see you next time.